Hello guys, so in this video we will see how to deploy a app in Kubernetes and expose it using Kubernetes service. So I have already written an article on this in Medium and I have made that into two parts, the part 1 and then part 2. So in part 1 the majority of discussion will be revolving around Docker. So if you know Docker you can skip to part 2, or also you can forward this video to the part where I discuss about Kubernetes. So let's get started. So to understand this video you need to know what is Flask web framework in Python and just what is Docker. And the tools I'll be using in this videos are Docker, Minikube, an account in Docker Hub, and kubectl. I will put the link of this article in the description if you need to refer this. And if you just click on this Docker, it will get you to the Docker installation page, and same holds for Minikube and all other tools. So I have just discussed what is the version of Docker I'm using and what is the version of Minikube I'm using, and finally I'm using kubectl also for this. So let's check kubectl version. So this is the kubectl version which I'm using. You can see the client version and server version, and I'm using Minikube. Okay, so the step 1 is creating a simple hello world application in Flask. It's merely like 6 lines. So it's very simple application which returns hello, how are you buddy. So also we can see it in action in local. So I have kept this file here and let's run it. Here you can see it's running on this localhost and it is displaying hello, how are you buddy. So the Flask app is working fine, and that's what I have discussed up to here. Then comes the Docker part. So if you don't know about Docker, this means explains all about Docker. It's just that we are creating a environment where our app would work on the client side also. So once you're done with your app, then you need to create a Docker file, preferably in the place where you have kept your app. So in our case, our app is just a simple hello world application. So, and I have created a Docker file here simply by naming a file, opening a file and naming it as Docker file without any extensions. So let me open this Docker file, and you can see I have used the base image as Python 3.7, and I have also added comments for each line. So with run mkdir root app makes a directory called app, and then we are saying set the working directory to be this app, and then we are adding everything. If you can find this dot, it says add all whatever in this current directory to the app folder, and then run the command pip install -or requirements.txt, and then finally run the Python command. Sorry. So if you have been working with Python, then you should be knowing how to create this requirements.txt. So that's what I have listed here. So initially we'll be adding this main.py and requirements.txt. So for those of you who don't know how to create this requirements.txt, just run this pip freeze requirements.txt, so that all the dependency of this app will be written down in this requirements.txt. So once we have this main.py and requirements.txt, go on and create this Docker file, which is pretty self-explanatory. And once we have created this Docker file, we need to build the Docker file. That would be the first step. So first we need to build it, then tag it and push it to the Docker Hub. So building is a very simple command. Go to the folder where your Docker file resides and type out this command. And this hello world is nothing but the name of the Docker image. So let me run it here. Put this password, and here you can see the Docker image is getting created. I am cancelling this. Okay, anyway, it's built. We clear the terminal. Once you have built it, then you need to tag it. So before tagging the Docker file, make sure you do a sudo docker login. So once you do sudo docker login, it will be prompting you for your username and password. Since I have been logged in already, I think it will take me to the login succeeded command. So once you do docker login, make sure that you get this login succeeded prompt without any error. So once you have logged into your Docker, then go and tag your image. This is the command, and I have given an example for this. So in my case, the Docker image name would be hello world, and its tag would be 0.1, followed by a space, and then your Docker user ID. In my case, it is Vignesh Kadir Kamar, and hello world, and which tag would be 0.1. So once you have tagged it, you need to push this to your Docker hub. So make a sudo docker push user ID for your Docker and the name and respective tag of your image. And with that, the Docker part is over. And now let's jump into the Kubernetes part. If you're new to Kubernetes, then few things you need to have a good understanding about, like what is a Kubernetes cluster. So you can see Kubernetes cluster is one which has many hexagons within this. So these hexagons are nothing but node, and there is a control plane, and within this node, if you notice, there is a kubelet and a Docker. So these are node processes. Let's get to every items within Kubernetes cluster one by one. So first, what is a node? You can imagine node as one single computer. So you can make it out like a Kubernetes cluster is made of multiple computers or virtual machines, and there is one control plane which controls these nodes. And now let's dive deep into the node. So within node you can observe some circles. So these circles are called pod, and within these pod you can find some cube and cylinders. So these cubes are nothing but containerized tab, and this cylinder stands for volume. So at this point of time we won't be covering volume. It is enough if you understand what is a node, and a pod is running inside the node, and within the pod there are containerized apps. So that's all about in this article. Let's jump on to the next one, the part 2 one. So now we have this Docker file and our app ready. Let's go and create a deployment file. So we'll be writing all the files for Kubernetes in a format called YAML. So what I have done, I have created a Kubernetes folder. It's not necessary that you need to create this Kubernetes folder within this folder, but it's preferable to create it over here. So let's get into deployment.yaml, and I have also pasted the same thing here. So coming to deployments, we need to specify API version, kind, metadata and spec for all the YAML files which we are going to create, and consider a YAML file as a simple text file as of now. And you can see most of the lines in this YAML file are of key value. Just app is the key and Flask app is the value. So it is made like that. Image is the key and this will be the value. Okay, getting back to this deployment.yaml. So API version, kind would be deployment, and metadata, so it is just the name which you are going to name your app. In my case it is Flask app, and then I'm giving some specification of the deployment, like how many pods should be running. So here there are 2 pods, and the app specifying something called labels, and the app label as the value Flask app. Then so these are the general specs of deployment, and after this from line 15 we are going into the spec of pod. So if you notice this, you can see within a pod there is a container. So we are specifying the container's property. So the name of the container would be Flask app, and we are saying push the image from this Docker hub, and image pull policy always mentions that every time the deployment is deployed, the image would be pulled newly. And we are mentioning which port, uh, and we are making the container port is 5000. Here if you read this, container port is the port which app inside the container can be reached on. So within our container we just have this allowed Flask app, and we can reach it on this 5000 container. And there is something called target port. We will see that uh, in a short. So once this deployment.yaml is ready, we will go on and create this service.yaml. So the same thing, API version kind, there it was deployment, and here it would be service, and metadata I'm naming it to be Flask service, and spec is node port. So there are 4 different ports, I mean service, so I have listed them here. For now you can use node port, and we are mentioning something called selector. And if you read on to this command, you can find selector looks for the pod which has the label specified here. So for example, I am saying the label to be app Flask app. In deployment also you can find app to be Flask app. So it will match the deployment. So I have written it very detailed here, you can go through this. And then we are saying ports here, and protocol let it be TCP, and this port we are mentioning 6000, and target port. So make sure this target port should be the container port which we specified in deployment.yaml. So the target port has to match the container port on deployment.yaml. So once we have done this, now we are ready to do this kubectl apply command. So before doing this, let me go to this minikube dashboard, and here you can find already I have done 2 deployments. Let me delete this Flask app from here. Let's go to pods. Okay, the Flask app is deleted, and now let's go back to this VS Code. And if you find in this article, I would have mentioned kubectl apply -f deployment.yaml. So let's run that command. Okay, I have missed apply, that's the problem. Okay, once we have done this command, we can find deployment.apps Flask app creator, and then we will apply this command also, which will deploy the service. Okay, so before doing that, let's go back to our minikube, and here you can see Flask app is deployed. And let's go to service. Let me delete this Flask service, and here you can find it was deployed created 17 days ago. Let me delete this. So now we have only 2 services. Now let's go and apply this command. Okay, so it should be service. Okay, let's refresh this page. Okay, now we got our service deployed. This you can find 7 seconds ago. So similarly, you can verify when your deployment was created just a minute ago when we run this kubectl apply -f deployment.yaml. Done. Okay, so it's finally our time to check the service from Kubernetes cluster. So let's go back to this article. Okay, I have done this minikube start and minikube dashboard already, and Then you need to view our deployed app using this command minikube service, name of the service. So if you remember, in our service.yaml file we have named our service to be Flask service. So let's run the command minikube service Flask service. Okay, here it is. Okay, so it's deployed. Here you can find hello, how are you, buddy? So once you run this command, it will print your namespace, name, target port, and URL. So within this URL is our app deployed. And if in case you are facing any errors, actually I faced a error while creating this Docker file, and yeah, this was the error which I had faced, and I used a fix, and I think it should be okay. I haven't put that. I will put the fix also for that. Okay, that's it. That's all about your getting started with Kubernetes. Thank you.